Huntsville, Chris on 2 for ham power down.
Chris, Huntsville's with you on 2. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was hoping to knock out my ham power down before I hop on to some exercise. And since we're down ops products, I don't actually have the steps. I know I turn off the radio, and then I think it's 13V6 off as well, and I couldn't remember if there was one more, and I was wondering if you could help me out with that.
Yeah, Chris, there's also one more step here. Switch the multi-voltage power supply 28-volt/13-volt convert to off.
Okay, I'll power down the radio, then I'll do 13V6 off, and then 28-volt, 13-volt to as well. All right, and the Columbus ham radio is powered down, and I will go do the SM1 in just a second, and then we'll have both of those things complete.
Okay, sounds good, Chris. If you need those steps for the SM radio, just give me a call.
Yep, copy. I'm familiar with the SM1s, and I remember those, so I will. You can consider that one done.
16, 14, 20. SA pressure is 768. BO pressure 799. SA temperature is 22.8. Temperature in BO is 22.1. Tigris, we copy. Baikonur launch lead to Tigris. Tigris, Baikonur launch lead. Go ahead. If necessary, I am ready to proceed to step 2.8 for the settings. Copy. We'll stand by. Tigris, Baikonur launch lead. You should be in step 2.9. That's going to be systems checkout. Copy. We are on page 25. Tigris. Central panel has the control. Copy. And I will be standing by for form 03. Tigris 2, Baikonur launch lead. I am ready to read out form 03 to you per page 25, and we are ready to copy. At 16:16:43 for line 1, 19.3, line 2, 1.8, line 3, 164, line 4, 22.2. 209, line 6, 210, line 7, 799, line 8, 1208, line 9, 22.9, line 10, 22.1, line 11, 768, line 12, 800 sharp, line 13, 21.9, 14 empty, number 8, 16, 739, line 17, 0, 18, 0, 19, 327, line 20, 1.1, line 21, 0.8, line 22, 331, line 23, 330, line 24, 0, line 25, 0, line 26, 339, 222, 803.2, line 29, 5.5, line 30, 11.11, line 31, 1, line 32, 0, line 33, 1, 2, 3, 6, point 0. The report is complete. Copy, Tigris. End of transmission. Tigris, Baikonur launch lead. I am ready to give you a clock sync with the count. Tigris, please repeat your last. Tigris 2 is ready to report the table for page 22. Page 22, the next measurement is for 16-19-35. SA pressure is 759. BO pressure 799. Temperature in SA 22.9. BO temperature is 22.2. Copy, Tigris. Tigris, Baikonur launch lead. This is Tigris. I am ready to give you the countdown from the input panel. Copy, stand by. Standing by. Tigris, what was the line 8 in form 03? Line 8. External loop pressure. Baikonur launch lead. Tigris, it's 1207. Copy. Tigris, Baikonur launch lead. We are done with the leak checks. Copy. We are done with the leak checks. Tigris, please give us a countdown from the input panel. Baikonur launch lead. Here is the countdown. Current date is 14th of July 2026. Time is 16, 21, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. Copy. Let's set the time then for the data input. Tigris, put in 1621. Okay, put in 1622:30. Copy. 1622:30. 15 seconds to input. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go. The time has been set. Let's do the sync. 16, 22, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. Copy. The clocks have been synced correctly. Now let's verify the time from the central computer on the input panel. We have set the time on both inputs. Copy. Now let's check the prop levels on the input. Copy. 0880. Copy. Put in 0880 according to the ODF procedures. Tigris, Baikonur launch lead. Go ahead. KDU number is 880. That's the number for prop. Copy. We are done. Tigris, we are done with the checkout. Now let's continue to page 26. That's going to be maneuver data verification. Baikonur launch lead, this is Tigris. Maneuver data are all correct. Continue to page 27. All right, we are moving on to page 27. Baikonur launch lead, this is Tigris. I depressed the transmit button and I am ready to continue. We tighten the straps and we are starting with putting on our gloves. What about RPV valve 1? Is it open? It is open. All right, we are checking our ventilation in the suits after we put our gloves on. All right, I've got 3 clicks. 3 clicks, and the clearance is the same. All right, I confirm that I have the ventilation. Copy. All right, 3 clicks here for me. And the suit ventilation is on. All right, we are checking the pressure regulator cover. 04 for me, 04 for me. All right, close the visors. Visor is closed, 2 clicks. Visor is closed, 2 clicks. For Anil.
Close visor.
Есть, да, щелка.
I have 2 clicks, visors closed.
Сейчас пока вентиляцию.
Check ventilation. I have ventilation. I confirm I have ventilation. Closing pressure regulator. Closing pressure regulator. I close pressure regulator. Preliminary pressurization. I confirm.
Так, на счет 0. 3.
Starting at 0, 3, 2, 1. Start. Open.
Есть рост давления. Сейчас рост давления.
Pressure increasing. I have my pressure increasing as well. I have point 1, point 1, point 1. Copy.
Два.
42.
102.
Point 2. Point 3. 0.35. Copy. Close. Point 3.
Okay. Принял 0.
Point 3. Copy. Point 3.
У меня надо открывать климат.
At 0. Opening. At point 35. Opening pressure regulator and open visors when the pressure was expanded. Open. Visors open. Close suit O2 valve. Copy.
Результаты проверки герметичности.
Leak check results from 0 to 0.1. Series 1, 24 seconds. Anya, you were second series 2, 26 seconds. And 34 seconds for Tidus 3. Copy. I was the first. Okay, correction. Tigris 2, 24 seconds. Tigris 1, 26 seconds. Tigris 3, 34 seconds. Copy. From 0 to 0.35. Tigris 1, Tigris 2, 1 minute 20. Tigris 1, 1 minute 36, and Tigris 3, 1 minute 49. Copy. Let's open manual ISO valve 2. Copy, launch lead. The suits are not leaking, and we are opening manual ISO valve 2, and after that we're standing by for your report on the parameters. Copy. Launch lead, I'm Tigris 1. Go ahead. Manual ISO valve 1 and 2 are open, and I'm ready to report pressure on page 88. SR pressure 802, O2 partial pressure 199, section 102 pressure 207 to 208, third section 223. Copy. The suits are not leaking and the visors are open. Releasing the PTT button. Copy to Gussis. What's the depress command inhibit button switch? It is inhibited. Copy. Prepare for medical parameters recording. Copy launch lead. Medical parameter recording.
Включили ТОС-1, наблюдаем командира корабля, инженера.
This is we activated camera 1 in the ESA. We can see the commander and the flight engineer. Up.
Началось запись медпараметров.
This is we started medical parameter recording. Copy.
just went off your screen, and now you're seeing an interior view of that Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft. There on your screen is NASA astronaut Anil Menon, who is joined by his two Roscosmos crewmates, Pyotr Dubrov in a live view of launch pad 6 Site 31 at Roscosmos. There on your screen is NASA astronaut Anil Menon, who is joined by his two Roscosmos crewmates, Pyotr a.m. Eastern Time, which is 7:47 and 43 seconds p.m. at the launch site in Baikonur. It is a warm 100 degrees Fahrenheit with clear skies down at the launch site, and earlier today the Soyuz booster was fueled for launch by engineers in Baikonur, a process that was completed just a few hours ago. The launch control team in Baikonur reports that all systems are go for launch with no issues currently being worked as the countdown enters its final phase. Again, there on your screen for a moment you saw a view of that Soyuz 2.1 booster as it stands fully fueled and ready for launch, and now you're seeing a live view inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Houston, Texas. The team currently on console is the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers who recently completed handover with the Orbit 1 team. Currently leading the team here is NASA Flight Director Chris Dobbins, and joining him on console at Capcom for today, or capsule communicator, is ESA, or European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano, who you can see there on the center of your screen. Here in Mission Control, the team is monitoring the Expedition 74 crew and station systems on board the International Space Station, and they are preparing to support the arrival of the Soyuz MS-29 later today. The station population will increase temporarily from 7 to 10 with the addition of NASA astronaut Anil Menon and his Roscosmos crewmates. Again, that is Soyuz Commander Pyotr Dubrov and flight engineer Anna Kikina. The crew is all set to begin a flight of just over 3 hours in duration to the International Space Station, with docking scheduled at 12:56 p.m. Central Time, 1:56 p.m. Eastern Time to the Prichal module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Station. Around 2.5 hours after docking, the hatches will be opened between the newly arrived spacecraft and space station. Menon, Dubrov, and Kikina will then be greeted by Station Commander Sergei Kudryashkov and his crewmates Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Mikhaev and Andrei Fedyaev. NASA astronauts Chris Williams, Jessica Meir, and Jack Hathaway, along with the European Space Agency or ESA astronaut Sophie Adhanomov, will also be on hand to greet the newly arrived crew. After handover of about 2 weeks, NASA astronaut Chris Williams and his Roscosmos crewmates Sergei Kudryashkov and Sergei Mikhaev, who you can see there on your screen, will depart in their Soyuz MS-28 spacecraft on July 26th, heading for a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan after spending about 8 months on board the International Space Station, conducting hundreds of scientific investigations and research demonstrations. Menon and his crew will remain on board the orbiting laboratory through March of next year on the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft, which they are currently on board, and again waiting that liftoff later today in just about 58 minutes from now. Menon's launch today mirrors that of Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev, who launched to the space station this past February on a SpaceX Dragon spacecraft as part of NASA's SpaceX Crew 12 mission, providing a reciprocal crew exchange capability to maintain safe and continuous space station operations.
Number 9. 16.
There on your screen again, you can see live view inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room here in Mission Control, Houston. Again, the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers is currently on console. They came on console a little over an hour ago and completed that shift handover with the Orbit 1 team, and this Orbit 2 team will remain on console for the duration of today's dynamic operations, all the way through docking and opening later today. Again, they are being led by NASA Flight Director Chris Dobbins, and the Capcom for today, or here is ESA, or European Space Agency astronaut Luke Parmitano. Parmitano is the veteran of 2 space flights to the International Space Station, both on the Soyuz spacecraft, so he has that experience on the Soyuz, which of course is what we are focusing on today. And now he is also trained for his 3rd mission as pilot for NASA's Artemis 3 mission. Today, in his role as captain, 4 crew currently on board the International Space Station. We also have visiting vehicle officer, VVO, at Faust on console today. The visiting vehicle officer serves as the guidance and navigation liaison between the space station and visiting spacecraft. Dobbins, Parmitano, Faust, and the rest of the flight control team in Houston are continuing to monitor the systems on board the space station, which will be the final destination for the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft later today. And you're now seeing a live view off the balcony of the Russian Mission Control Center, which is located in Koryov, just outside of Moscow in Russia, and launch through spacecraft separation is controlled at the blockhouse in Baikonur. At the time of spacecraft separation, flight control will then be over to the team at the Russian Mission Control Center. The teams in Mission Control Houston, as well as the Russian Mission Control Center, work together to operate as an integrated team for Soyuz operations and share telemetry, data, and voice loops throughout the dynamic operations, with the flight directors between both control centers communicating throughout. Again, you're seeing a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A rocket on its launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Liftoff today is scheduled for 9:47 a.m. Central Time, 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 7:47 p.m. in Baikonur in the Central Asian Desert. The countdown is continuing to proceed on schedule. We are just about 55 minutes away from launch, with no issues being reported by engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. Atop the Soyuz 2.1A booster, strapped into their seats and descent module of the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft again are NASA astronaut Anil Menon and his Roscosmos cosmonaut crewmates Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina. Dubrov, as Soyuz commander, is in the center seat of the descent module, and he is flanked to his left by Anna Kikina, who is serving as board engineer number 1, and to Dubrov's right is Anil Menon, who is serving as board engineer number 2. This is the first flight into space for Menon, and the second for Kikina, who has 157 days of previous spaceflight experience. It's also the second flight into space for Dubrov, who has chalked up 355 days of spaceflight experience on his previous flight. Kikina previously flew to space as part of NASA's SpaceX Crew 5 mission in 2022, and Dubrov launched aboard the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft in 2021. Again, clocks are continuing to tick backward, just under 54 minutes until launch of the Soyuz MS-29 crew to the International Space Station. For NASA's Anil Menon, today's launch marks the start of his first visit to the International Space Station. Menon was selected by NASA to join the 2021 astronaut candidate class, graduating in 2024 and then jumping right into training for this mission. Menon was born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and is an emergency medicine physician, mechanical engineer, and colonel in the United States Space Force. Let's take a moment to learn more about Anil Menon and his road to becoming an astronaut.
Reporting. Report received.
there was a problem that you could solve that. At NASA with the ISS.
Five. Ready for position. Copy the report.
That video there was of NASA astronaut Anil Menon, who again is preparing to launch on his first flight to the International Space Station in just about 48 minutes from now. Menon, who is an emergency medicine physician, still practices emergency medicine in his spare time, and he also previously served as a flight surgeon for both NASA and SpaceX. If you're just joining us, you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft atop its Soyuz 2.1A booster on the launch pad at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in the Central Asian Desert. Again, those countdown clocks are continuing count backward just about 48 minutes before the launch of NASA astronaut Anil Menon, alongside his Roscosmos cosmonaut crewmates Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina. Liftoff today is scheduled for 9:47 a.m. Central Time, 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 7:47 p.m. in Baikonur. The countdown is proceeding on schedule with no issues being reported by launch engineers in Baikonur. There on your screen, you can see video of some of the preparations leading up to today's launch. So ahead of today's launch activities, the crew flew to the Baikonur Cosmodrome from their training base at Russia on June 29 to complete final pre-launch training and inspections of their Soyuz spacecraft. You can see the 3 crew members there on your screen as they departed that plane in Baikonur and then boarded a bus and headed to the Cosmodrome to complete those final activities. Following the crew's arrival to the Baikonur Cosmodrome, they completed some final training activities activities that was taking place on June 30th and 31st, about 2 weeks ago. You can see a clip of the crew as they take a look and pose for a photo in front of their Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft, which was at the integration building in Baikonur. In context, the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft was encapsulated into the update stage of the Soyuz booster in that integration building just last week. There on your screen now you can see a view of the crew's zero gravity or zero G indicator, which is actually 3 different zero G indicators all put together. So each crew member had the opportunity to choose to fly a zero G indicator, and Anil actually chose to fly a plush dog in remembrance of his family dog, which was a black German shepherd named Sirius Black, who passed away earlier this year. And you're now seeing footage of the crew with their spacesuits, and in addition to the final checkouts of the Soyuz spacecraft, the crew also completed fit and pressure checks for their spacesuits, or Sokol suits, following their arrival to Baikonur. And these are those pressure suits that you can see them wearing there on your screen, that they wear on board the Soyuz spacecraft during launch, docking, undocking, and re-entry. The suits provide a safe environment for each crew member, and they are part of the crew survival system equipment. And from left to right there was NASA Anil Menon, and he was joined by the commander of the Soyuz spacecraft, Pyotr Dubrov, and Anna Kikina. The Sokol spacesuits include an inner pressure layer as well as an outer layer, and the boots of those suits are integrated into the suit and are unable to be removed. However, the gloves are removable, as seen in the video there, where they are practicing donning or putting on these gloves as part of his fit and pressure checks. The gloves are attached to the suit with wrist cufflinks, and just a few minutes ago, the crew confirmed that they have put those gloves on and also closed their visors in preparation for today's launch, and they were ensuring that the suits were ready to go for that launch. Again, we are about 44 minutes away from liftoff later today. And the crew did begin their quarantine period once they arrived in Baikonur. So all of the individuals in these clips are also part of that quarantine requirement alongside the crew. Ahead of all spaceflight missions, astronauts undergo a mandatory quarantine, which restricts contact with those outside of the quarantine to ensure that the crews don't contract an illness that could delay a mission. Again, all this footage was previously recorded in the preparations leading up to today's launch video. And as the 3 crew members completed their training in Baikonur, the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft was encapsulated into the upper stage of the Soyuz booster in the integration building just last week. After the 3 stages of the Soyuz 2.1A booster were made together, the Soyuz rocket began its track to launch pad shortly after sunrise Saturday, July 11th, transported to the pad horizontally on a rail car, in a process that took about 30 minutes to complete. Once at the pad, the Soyuz was raised hydraulically to its vertical position for final pre-launch preparations that have been ongoing for the past 3 days, and you can see that process there on your screen. As we continue to monitor the countdown, with the clocks ticking backward, we are now again showing that live shot of the Soyuz 2.1A booster with the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft on top, and currently seated and strapped in, ready for today's launch. Inside that Soyuz spacecraft are NASA astronaut Anil Menon and his Roscosmos crewmates Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina. The clocks for today's launch are continuing to tick backwards. We're about 42 minutes away from launch of the next crew to the International Space Station, out on the launch pad at Site 31 at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Again, the Soyuz booster is poised for launch, fully fueled with kerosene and liquid oxygen as propellant. The Soyuz 2.1A is the vehicle for crews that launch to the International Space Station from the Baikonur Cosmodrome, and this is the workhorse of the Russian space program. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at the Soyuz booster. Again, that was a look at the Soyuz 2.1A booster, which is the ticket to ride for the Soyuz crews to the International Space Station. And you're now again seeing that live view of the launch pad where the Soyuz 2.1A booster and its Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft are stacked and ready for launch. The clock continuing to tick backwards. We're about 40 minutes away from that launch of NASA astronaut Anil Menon alongside Roscosmos cosmonauts Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina. Atop that Soyuz 2.1A booster and strapped into their seats in the descent module, which is the center section of the three-section Soyuz capsule, are Menon, Dubrov, and Kikina. The three sections of the Soyuz spacecraft are familiar to those who have watched previous missions to the International Space Station. So here's an up-close look at the Soyuz spacecraft.
We have it vertical. Copy. Five electrical systems are transmitting. Copy.
Again, that was a look at the Soyuz spacecraft And now you are seeing a live view of the Soyuz 2.1A booster, and that Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft is encapsulated inside there. And on your screen, you can see as the gantry arms surrounding the spacecraft are beginning to be lowered. Those are those green arms that were buttressed up next to the Soyuz 2.1A booster. There are two service umbilicals, which are still attached to the side of the Soyuz booster. And the first of those umbilicals will retract around the T-minus 35 second mark, and the second will retract at the T-minus 15 second mark, which will then initiate engine sequence start of the first and second stage engines. Engine start of the first stage comes in 3 phases. There's the preliminary, an intermediate, and a final, where the engines are then up to full throttle. Again, there's a closer up view of those gantry arms as they begin to retract. As we continue to count down for today's launch, the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft carrying NASA astronaut Anil Menon and his cosmonaut crewmates Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina to the International Space Station. We're now about 36 minutes away from that launch. Again, that launch scheduled for at 9:47 and 43 seconds a.m. Central Time this morning, 10:47 and 43 seconds a.m. Eastern Time, which is about 7:43 and 43 seconds p.m. in Baikonur. The launch today is a 10-second launch window at that time. In addition to the gantry arms retracting, there will be several other milestones leading up to today's launch. Many of those coming once we reach the T-minus 10-minute mark of the countdowns, so about 25 minutes from now. At about T-minus 7 minutes, the pre-launch operations will be officially complete, and at that point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster is officially ready for launch, and the engineers will continue to receive telemetry from both the Soyuz 2.1A booster and the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft to indicate that all primary and backup systems are set to support liftoff. About a minute after that mark, at T-minus 6 minutes, the launch key will then be inserted into the launch bunker, and this is a real key that transitions the launch sequence into automatic mode. About 30 seconds after that, at T-minus 5 minutes and 30 seconds, launch control will report that the range at Baikonur is clear, and the Soyuz rocket is ready to begin its journey. 30 seconds after that, at T-minus 5 minutes, the onboard systems will switch to onboard control, and the commander's cockpit displays and controls will be activated, and the crew members will also close their helmet visors, which will put them on suit oxygen. A minute later, the fuel lines and other elements of the rocket engines will then merge with nitrogen to fireproof them, which will remove vapors of fuel and oxidizer. About a minute and 15 seconds after that, the booster's fuel tanks will officially be pressurized for flight, which optimizes the flow of fuel and helps to add structural support to the rocket. About a minute and a half after that, around the T-minus 1 minute and 30 second mark, things will pick up and the ground propellant feed will be terminated to the Soyuz booster, and shortly after that, the Soyuz will then be on internal power. And again, at around the T-minus 35 second mark, the first umbilical tower will separate from the booster, and we will have that auto sequence start. And then the ground umbilical to the third stage will be disconnected. And then the second umbilical tower will separate, which will initiate engine sequence start. And then the launch command will be issued, and we will then be into the final 10 seconds ahead of launch.
System is armed. 60, air copy. Report accepted.
Again, just a few moments ago, we did see those gantry arms retract or lower. Those were those two green towers that were buttressed up next to the Soyuz 2.1A spacecraft, and you're continuing to see a live view of that Soyuz. Continue to count down for today's launch. We're just under 33 minutes away from launch as those countdown clocks continue to tick backwards. And there on your screen, you can see a live look inside that Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft. In the bottom portion of your screen is the Soyuz commander for today, who is Roscosmos cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov. And to the right side of the screen is Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina. Kikina, and just out of the field of view, on the other side of Dubrov is NASA astronaut Anil Menon. Dubrov is seated in the center as the commander, and then Kikina is serving as board engineer number 1, and Menon is serving as board engineer number 2 for today's flight. Descent module of the Soyuz. You briefly heard some music there, and that music you hear is music specifically chosen by, and there on your screen you can now see NASA astronaut Anil Menon as he is strapped in to the descent module of the Soyuz spacecraft, and dangling above on the top portion of the screen is that zero gravity indicator, which we saw a look at earlier. Again, these are actually 3 separate little items that each crew member was able to choose, and they hooked them all together. So for Anil, he chose to fly a plush dog, which was in remembrance of his family dog, which was Black German Shepherd, who recently passed away. Again, the clock continuing to tick backwards. We're just about 31 minutes away from today's launch. That launch is scheduled for 9:47 a.m. Central, 10:47 a.m. Eastern, which is 7:47 p.m. in Baikonur. MS-29 spacecraft, the descent module specifically, and there on your screen you can see NASA astronaut Anil Menon, and next to him is Roscosmos cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov, and then next to him and out of the field of view is Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina. The trio is set to launch on top of the Soyuz 2.18 rocket from its launch pad at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Again, that liftoff scheduled for 9:47 a.m. Central Time, 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 7:47 p.m. in Baikonur in the Central Asian Desert. The countdown is continuing to proceed on schedule with no issues being reported by engineers at the blockhouse in Baikonur. Again, following today's launch, the Soyuz MS-29 will have a 2-orbit journey ahead of it before docking to the International Space Station. That docking is scheduled to take place later today at 12:56 p.m. Central, 1:56 p.m. Eastern to the Prichal module on the Earth-facing side of the station's Russian segment. Once the crew docks, teams will work through procedures to conduct leak checks and pressurization of the vestibule, which is the space between the Soyuz hatch and the station hatch, exposed to the vacuum of space prior to that docking. In preparation for hatch opening, that pressurization will take place along with leak checks, and following this morning's launch, we will return on air for docking coverage at 12:10 p.m. Central, 1:10 p.m. Eastern, with hatch opening coverage taking place at 2:30 p.m. Central, 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Once the hatches are open, the newly arrived Soyuz MS-29 crew will join the rest of the Expedition 74 crew on board the International Space Station for a brief welcoming ceremony, and then begin a handover with the MS-28 crew, who will return to Earth later this month, returning NASA astronaut Chris Williams back to Earth. And during his 8-month stay as part of Expeditions 74 and 75, NASA astronaut Anil Menon will conduct scientific investigations and technology demonstrations to help prepare humans for future exploration missions to the Moon and Mars, which will benefit people on Earth. One of those experiments is called in-space production of semiconductor crystals. Researchers are continuing to fine-tune in-space production of semiconductor crystals to enable large-scale manufacturing and boost the development of a low Earth orbit commercial economy. These complex materials are critical for high-performance computing, augmented reality, aerospace, and autonomous and artificial intelligence systems. Another experiment that Anil will support is known as Venus Flow, which studies astronaut vein structure, blood flow, and blood composition in microgravity to identify if physical differences cause blood flow abnormalities during spaceflight. Researchers will look to see if there are correlations between these factors and work to develop preventative measures for at-risk crew members.
Pressure of water as 20.4.
Again, we are continuing to count down for today's launch. We're about 26 minutes away from that liftoff, which is scheduled to take place at 9:47 p.m. Central, 10:47 a.m. 9:47 a.m. Central, 10:47 a.m. Eastern. Right now, you're seeing a view from the balcony of the Russian Mission Control Center, which is in Koryov, outside of Moscow in Russia. Launch of the Soyuz today is led by engineers from the blockhouse in Baikonur, and then control will then be transferred to this Russian Mission Control Center. And of course, the teams here in Mission Control Houston inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room work closely with the team in Russia in preparation for today's rendezvous and docking taking place later today. The teams here in Mission Control Houston recently did do a go, no-go poll to indicate station readiness to receive the Soyuz spacecraft. And now on your screen you are seeing some video from earlier today. Launch day for the 3 crew members began several hours ago. They were awakened at their cosmonaut hotel crew quarters to begin their final pre-launch activities. The crew then signed their names on the doors to the rooms in the cosmonaut hotel where they spent the past 2 weeks. And then to traditional farewell music, the crew departed the cosmonaut hotel and boarded a bus, that bus there on your screen, for about a 35-minute ride to the integration and suit-up facility at Building 254 inside the Baikonur Cosmodrome. Again, this was the scene several hours ago as the crew departed the cosmonaut hotel. And there on your screen you can see as the crew arrived to the integration building, and each crew member underwent final medical exams and suited up in their Sokol launch and entry suits. One by one, the crew members moved to a mock-up of a Soyuz spacecraft seat to allow technicians to conduct pressure checks, ensuring that their suits were airtight and free of any leaks. Undergoing those checks first is the Soyuz commander for today, who is Roscosmos cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov. And there briefly on your screen, you can see NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, who flew to the Baikonur Cosmodrome in support of today's launch of NASA astronaut Anil Menon. While they were in the integration building, family members and invited guests looked on across a protective pane of glass to maintain that quarantine. And that suit up was completed a little over 5 hours prior to launch. And then after the commander for the Soyuz spacecraft today, Pyotr Dubrov, completed his final checks, NASA astronaut Anil Menon then began his checks of the so-called suit. Again, they move into a mock-up of the Soyuz spacecraft, which allows the technicians there to conduct pressure checks and ensure that their suits are airtight and free of any leaks. Again, this video coming from several hours ago as the crew completed some final suit checks ahead of today's launch. One by one, they completed those final pressure checks using a mock-up of the Soyuz spacecraft seat. Soyuz Commander Pyotr Dubrov, who's a Roscosmos cosmonaut, completed that check first, followed by NASA astronaut Anil Menon, who is serving as board engineer number 2 today on board the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft. And there you can see NASA astronaut Anil Menon speaking to his Soyuz commander Pyotr Dubrov as Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina then completed her suit checks. Again, Kikina is serving as board engineer number 1 today on board the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft.
I'll get to work on Anna's video.
As those checks were completed, they did have family members and guests looking across a pane of glass. And then the crew had the opportunity to exchange final remarks with senior NASA and Roscosmos managers.
I'm full of joy. Thank you very much.
There you can see as Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina exchanges some of those final remarks. We also briefly saw NASA astronaut Anil Menon. This is also a chance and a final opportunity for the crew to receive a status on vehicle preparations, and it's also an opportunity for folks to provide good luck remarks.
Greetings to the team there, to Kutzberchkov and the other guys. So best greetings from Korolev family. Самые лучшие пожелания от семьи Сергея Павловича Королева.
Best wishes from the family of Sergei Korolev. You are in our thoughts. Looking forward to see you back. The state commission has taken place. The rocket is being filled up. By the time you're there, everything will be ready. Everything is nominal. Wishing you good luck. You know everything.
I know you are all true professionals. I have no doubt you will represent NASA and Roscosmos very well. And the old to you, few have ever worked harder in their life to chase their dreams. No one has earned this more. Godspeed, my friend.
Congratulations to the entire crew. Salzman. All Americans, we're so proud of you. We love you. May God bless you and protect you throughout this entire mission. Godspeed.
Thank you, sir.
Again, that was as the crew exchanged final remarks with senior NASA and Roscosmos managers. We did see NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman as well as Deputy Administrator Matt Anderson as they provided some final words of good luck and parting wisdom for NASA astronaut Anil Menon. And then, as tradition called for, the crew members left the Site 254 in a Dubrov, who's the Soyuz commander, to report that he and his crewmates were ready to proceed to the launch pad.
Inaudible.
The trio then headed to their bus, which they boarded for their ride to launch Site 31 at about 6:06 a.m. Central Time, 7:06 a.m. Eastern Time, Tuesday morning, which was about 4:06 p.m. Tuesday afternoon in Baikonur.
Now onto the bus.
There you can see as people wish the crew well and the crew waves goodbye as they left the integration building and began their trek out to the launch pad. Again, that trip took a little less than an hour to complete across the sprawling and desolate launch complex. There you can see as the Soyuz MS-29 crew arrived at the launch complex. Leading the crew is Roscosmos cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov, and NASA astronaut Anil Menon is flanked to his right with Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina to his right. After arriving at the launch pad, the crew then had to climb a few stairs. You can see there NASA astronaut Anil Menon being joined by NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman and Deputy Administrator Matt Anderson, leading them to those stairs. Again, the crew then climbed those stairs and waved goodbye to well-wishers. At the top of those stairs is Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina, and then NASA astronaut Anil Menon, and at the base is the Soyuz commander, who is Roscosmos cosmonaut Pyotr Dubrov, again waving a final goodbye as they prepare to board their launch vehicle. Again, this video being captured several hours ago.
Thank you.
After they did their final waves, the crew entered the elevator for the ride to the top of the Soyuz rocket to board their spacecraft. And the crew has now been aboard that Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft for about the past 2 hours. With that B-roll feed now complete, we are now back live looking at the launch pad where the Soyuz 2.1A booster stands ready for launch in just about 12 minutes from now. At the time of launch, the International Space Station will be flying over southwest Kazakhstan, moving from southwest to northeast. The station will be 286 miles behind Soyuz and will pass directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome 28 seconds after the Soyuz 2.1A booster lifts off, leapfrogging past the Soyuz as Menon, Dubrov, and Kikina climb to their preliminary orbit. 8 minutes and 45 seconds after launch, the third stage engine of the Soyuz booster will shut down, and the Soyuz spacecraft will separate from its launch vehicle in its preliminary orbit, deploying its solar arrays and navigational antennas. At that point, the 3 Soyuz crew members will be 1,137 miles behind and 142 miles below the space station, and the chase will begin. This will then result in a docking to the Prichal node module on the Earth-facing side of the space station's Russian segment at around 12:56 p.m. Central Time, 1:56 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, following today's launch at 9:47 a.m. Central Time, 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 7:47 p.m. in Baikonur, the crew has a 2-orbit, 3-hour journey ahead of that docking later today. At the launch site on the steppe of Kazakhstan, NASA officials are on hand to watch the beginning of the journey for NASA astronaut Anil Menon and his Roscosmos crewmates Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina. Leading the NASA delegation on hand for today's launch is NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, NASA Human Spaceflight Deputy Administrator Joel Montalbano, International Space Station Deputy Program Manager Dina Cantella, Deputy Flight Operations Director Kjell Lindgren, and NASA astronaut Joe Akaba. And joining that delegation is NASA Public Affairs Officer Joseph Zakchevsky, who filed this report a short time ago.
Thank you, Anna, and good evening from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, just a few miles away from the launch pad where the Soyuz stands ready for liftoff. In addition to the NASA officials that you had mentioned, here to support the crew are several family members and friends of NASA astronaut Anil Menon, including his wife Anna, who flew alongside Administrator Jared Isaacman on the Polaris Dawn mission back in 2024. When Anil reaches orbit, he and Anna will become the 11th spouse team to fly in space. During the crew press conference, Menon shared his excitement for the mission and is eager to begin scientific research on his very first day aboard the orbiting laboratory. He is also excited to bring many personal family traditions to the station, including celebrating the Christmas holiday season with his expedition crewmates. The weather heading into these final moments before launch is in the high 90s Fahrenheit, and there will be a special moment for those here at the viewing site as the International Space Station will fly over Baikonur just seconds after liftoff. We continue to stand by for the launch of NASA astronaut Anil Menon and Roscosmos cosmonauts Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina on their journey to the International Space Station. Back over to you, Anna.
Again, that was NASA Public Affairs Officer Joseph Zakchevsky, who is at the launch site in Kazakhstan alongside the rest of the NASA delegation awaiting today's launch of the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft, which will carry NASA astronaut Anil Menon and Roscosmos cosmonauts Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina to the International Space Station for an 8-month mission. We're just under 9 minutes away from today's launch, and you are seeing a view inside the Soyuz spacecraft. There on your screen, you can see NASA astronaut Anil Menon, and he is joined by the commander of the Soyuz, who is Pyotr Dubrov, who is seated next to Menon inside that descent module of the Soyuz. And then just out of field of view is Roscosmos cosmonaut Anna Kikina. Menon today is serving as board engineer number 2 for the spacecraft. Kikina is serving as board engineer number 1, and Dubrov is the commander of the Soyuz spacecraft. Coming up in just over a minute, around the T-minus 7-minute mark, pre-launch operations will be complete, and at that point in the countdown, the Soyuz booster is officially ready for launch, as engineers will continue to receive telemetry from both the Soyuz 2.1A booster and the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft, which will indicate that all primary and backup systems are set to support liftoff. Again, launch today is scheduled for 9:47 a.m. Central Time, 10:47 a.m. Eastern Time, which is 7:47 p.m. in Baikonur. Following their approximately 8-minute second ride to orbit, the crew will then have a 2-orbit, 3-hour chase to the space station ahead of a docking later today around 12:56 p.m. Central, 1:56 p.m. Eastern Time.
16-3, 1 minute straightness. Everything is per schedule. The launch will broadcast. I copy. Everything is fine on board. We are ready for launch. Copy.
And you were just hearing some interpretation there of the crew and the teams on the ground as the countdown continues. We did hear confirmation there that the crew on board the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft is go for today's launch, just under 7 minutes from now. Now that we are inside that 7-minute mark, the pre-launch operations are officially complete, so the Soyuz booster is ready for launch, and the engineers continuing to receive telemetry from the Soyuz booster and its spacecraft. Just about a minute from now, at the T-minus 2-minute and 45-second mark, the booster's fuel
7 millimeters.
55-40 секунд.
55-40. 7 millimeters.
7 миллиметров на начало.
Yes, 7 millimeters is the starting measurement.
На случай пропадания связи следующий пункт 7.4. Так, текущий замер 749.
Current measurement is 749.
This was on as the rendezvous all operated autonomously by Soyuz onboard computers, culminating with the docking to the Prichal module at 12:52 p.m. Central Time, 1:52 p.m. Eastern Time over the Mediterranean at an altitude of 260 statute miles. You're seeing the final approach, followed by contact and capture, coming up just a second or two from now. And there it was, contact and capture. That resulted in a dampening out of the relative motion of the two vehicles against one another, initiation of the closing of the hooks on both sides of the docking interface, first by the Soyuz side of the docking interface, followed by the Prichal of that docking interface. There is a live view from a balcony camera of the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of outside of Moscow, where the Russian flight controllers took over control of the flight of the Soyuz after its separation from the third stage of the Soyuz booster. They have been monitoring the pressure checks and the pressure equalization procedures that are being conducted on both sides of the docking interface that will lead shortly to the opening of the hatches on both sides, the Soyuz hatch opening, followed by the opening of the hatch on the station side on Prichal, allowing Menon, Dubrov, and Kikina to float on board. They'll be greeted by their Expedition 74 crewmates, and they'll move into the Zvezda service module for welcoming remarks by any guests that are on the balcony of the Mission Control Center there in Moscow, followed by any congratulatory remarks from the flight control team here in Houston. The Orbit 2 team of flight controllers here in Houston have been on console since early this morning, led by Flight Director Chris Dobbins. They have been monitoring the activities of the expedition crew on board the station and preparing for the hatch opening and the welcoming remarks. Seated to Dobbins' right is European Space Agency astronaut Luca Parmitano, who will be the pilot next year aboard Orion on the Artemis 3 mission on a low Earth orbit mission to test out rendezvous and docking procedures with human landing system provider spacecraft. As mentioned earlier, this is the second flight into space for Dubrov and Kikina. Dubrov was seated as the Soyuz commander in the center seat of the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft that you see in this view, attached to the Prichal module. On the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station, to Dubrov's left was board engineer number 1, Anna Kikina, in the second flight into space for her, and to Dubrov's right, Anil Menon, a former NASA flight surgeon and emergency room physician who is on his first flight into space. The trio will spend 8 months aboard the International Space Station. Let's take a look at Anil Menon, his background and his journey to this point, about to begin his journey aboard the International Space Station.
Marker? All right. Look over there. In the lens. We want you. I got interested in medicine really early, probably when I was in high school or earlier. My mom fell off of a bicycle, had this injury to her lower leg that required stitches and everything. She ended up being fine, but I went to the hospital with her. I think I remember that moment, seeing the impact that those doctors had on someone. I was a ER emergency medicine resident. It was time critical, and you could do it with your hands, and there was a problem that you could solve. That just drew me in. Medicine gets this rep of you have to go fast and people are rushing, but I don't think that's always the case, and that's the part of it that I really liked about medicine, is having those moments of being able to help, connect, and know who people truly are. The earthquake in Haiti may have, for me, been one of the transformative events that happened in my medical career. It ended up being a massive earthquake that injured over 1 million people with a lot of destruction there. And 4 of us doctors and 4 nurses immediately flew down, and the hospital was destroyed, which meant there was no local doctors, and we were the first doctors and nurses to come in and start building out that medical response there. And so it was like quickly accelerating the speed of your work experience and capability of helping people. And I joined the Oregon Air National Guard as a doctor, and then I became a flight surgeon there. And so that was practicing medicine in the air. And I saw that there was jobs at NASA, and so I wanted to be a NASA flight surgeon. Being a flight surgeon at NASA with the ISS program means working with the astronaut before they launch to space, make sure that they're as healthy as possible. That reduces problems when they're in space. But then if they're up there for a 6-month mission, something's going to come up. And so let's say they have a laceration or a pain. And the way to help them through that is telemedicine. So you're a remote doctor. You give them a call, ask them some questions about it, and then you know all the tools that are up there, and you know how to navigate it and handle it. And so you sometimes walk them through doing something, like it might be a laceration repair. And then sometimes you might treat them with medications, and we've recently seen that it even goes as far as some cases you can't treat up there. And so in those cases, you have to work with the whole system of NASA and evacuate them from space station and bring them back. But space makes it a little bit tricky. And so because it is tricky and every system changes in space, your cardiovascular system, your bone loss happens, your muscle mass goes down by 10%, you get vision changes, you get your fluid shifts, even your immune system goes down. Anything you can think of that you could find a doctor for on Earth, there is some change that's happening in space related to that it helps to have that specialized knowledge. People who are spending their time treating people right now or studying about it, those are what flight surgeons are and will be in the future. So it's going to be probably one of the few fields of medicine that really expands in the coming decade. Yeah, the reason I applied to be an astronaut was that I have learned through life that the best way to learn a thing is to go and do a thing. And so I wanted to get into the environment where I was helping people, learning about the medicine, and then using it in real life. And I knew that would make me the best doctor I could be in this field. My name is Anil Menon, and I am a NASA astronaut.
look at Anil Menon, who soon will be aboard the International Space Station. He and his Roscosmos crewmates aboard the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft, Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina, are in the process of continuing to conduct leak checks on their side of the docking interface with the Prichal module. Menon's wife, Anna Menon, is an astronaut candidate, having formerly flown into space with NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman on the Polaris Dawn mission. She was also a flight controller here in Mission Control before joining SpaceX, as did Menon for a while, Anil Menon. So we have a husband and wife team. Not the first time that's happened. 11 astronaut couples have been active astronauts for NASA over the course of the years. And Menon now will have an opportunity to spend about 8 months in space, returning to Earth next spring with Dubrov and Kikina for the same type of parachute-assisted landing that NASA's Chris Williams, Sergei Kud-Sverchkov, and Sergei Mikheyev will have come July 26th, when they undock from the International Space Station in the adjacent docking port at the Rosviet module, to which Menon and his Roscosmos crewmates arrived just about 2 hours ago. So we'll be standing by for further word on the progress of the leak checks being conducted on both sides of the docking interface at the Prichal module. Progress is being made towards the opening of the hatch.
Moscow, 25-minute measurement. Current measurement is 749 millimeters. Copy, 749.
And those numbers being offered that you hear are in millimeters of mercury to ensure that we have the proper pressure on both sides of the docking interface. There is a period of equalization for the small passageway or vestibule between the Soyuz and the Prichal before the hatches will be opened.
Inaudible. Why don't you go up and I will go down. Okay, this who's that? It's Anil's. This is Anya's.
Once the pressure is equalized on both sides of the docking interface, Kud-Sverchkov will open up the hatch on the Prichal side of the docking interface. That hatch will be opened first. And then the Soyuz crew will be opening their hatch on the MS-29 spacecraft, allowing the 3 crew members, Menon, Kikina, and Dubrov, to float inside to be greeted by the Expedition 74 crew. They will make their way into the Zvezda service module. We will have a brief LOS period where we will be out of comm between the satellites on our tracking and data relay satellite system. We are expecting the welcoming remarks somewhere in the neighborhood of 3:35 p.m. Central Time, 4:35 p.m. Eastern Time. Once the welcoming remarks are over with, there will be a safety briefing that Kud Sverchkov will take the lead on as the station commander. The suits that were worn by the 3 arriving crew members during their transit from the Baikonur Cosmodrome to the station, they will be dried out and available for use if needed at a later period of time. The newly arrived crew members will have a midday meal. They will deactivate the Soyuz systems, while the resident station crew, the Expedition 74 crew members who have been on board watching today's activities, will begin their own sleep period. The newly arrived crew members will have other activities before they begin an extended sleep period that will continue through most of the day on Wednesday. The International Space Station is currently flying from northwest to southeast at an altitude of 260 statute miles in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator, currently passing across the border between Myanmar and Thailand.
Current pressure is 7.
All of the Soyuz systems functioned as advertised during the course of the 3-hour journey for the MS-29 crew members to the station, and station systems themselves are operating normally.
Closing the pressure monitoring valve. It's closed.
Так, далее у нас мы работаем по странице 70.
Now we go to page 70, that's item 793. Copy. Step 793 on page 70. Okay, expedited pressure equalization between Soyuz and ISS. And let us confirm pressure in the ISS.
MCC Moscow ISS on Space to Ground 1 for Sergei Kudzerchkov. Go ahead. Could you tell us what the pressure is? Pressure is 753. Copy 753.
Current pressure is 753. Yes, continue working per procedure. Close manual ISO valve 1. Copy. Closing ISO valve 1. Valve is closed. And then open pressure equalization valve between vestibule and the ISS. Yes, use the panel for that.
The pressure equalization tests on both sides of the docking interface continuing to proceed as planned. No issues. It's just a very time-consuming process to make sure that the pressure is equalized on both sides of the docking interface so that we have an airtight seal prior to the opening of the hatches, first on the Prichal module side of the interface, followed by the opening of the hatch on the Soyuz side.
Continuing setting up 2 suits for drying.
The Soyuz crew aboard MS-29, they will be positioned for a drying period. The 3 newly arrived crew members will move into more comfortable flight clothing so that they are properly attired as they move through the hatch into the International Space Station a short time from now.
53 seconds. 1 minute commanding S6. Copy. I have the PV indicator not lit. Okay, waiting for the station hatch to be open. And after that, you will start the steps in the frame. Yes, I didn't change yet. Then you have some time right now to change into your flight suit. Yes, I'm finishing setting up suit for drying. Yes, let's finish this and then start changing.
Станция Хьюстон, третьем канале по гипервизору 4.
Okay. Activating flight engineer suit fan. 225510. And flight engineer 2. Okay, I put flight engineer suits for drying. Copy. Then the other one you will give to Sergei Kutsverchkov for drying in the other vehicle.
ISS MCC Moscow and Space Ground 1 for Sergei Kutsverchkov. Go ahead. We give you a go to open the transfer catch. Assume. Okay, copy. Executing. Copy. MCC Moscow, Estação Espacial 1, go ahead and Space 1. You see the video, everything is clear, everything is well seen, thank you. Copy.
Moscow, Tigris. And go ahead, actually, Tigris, Moscow. All right, guys, on your go, you can put steps in that frame in work. The station hatch is open. Copy, the station hatch is open.
Station hatch is open.
Okie dokie. On your go, we are going into that frame actions. We are opening KKT valve. Copy. KKT is open. Opening KVD. Affirmative.
This is Mission Control Houston. We are looking at a view from a balcony camera at the Russian Mission Control Center in the town of Korolyov outside of Moscow.
What's the pressure currently?
We are standing by for the routing of video in the basically on the Prichal module side of the docking interface,
based on the MB,
where the crew members are gathered for the imminent opening of the hatches.
Let me monitor the notification here. Okay. S5 is illuminated. Did you say S3? Give me a sec. Is it S5 or S3 or both? S5. Okay, S5 is not illuminated because it's not possible with
we
the station
are again
hatches
waiting for the opening of the hatches between the Soyuz MS-29 spacecraft and the Prichal module hatch has already been opened. So we're standing by for the Soyuz hatch to open. Just a few more steps being conducted by the newly arrived crew members, Anil Menon of NASA, and Roscosmos cosmonauts, Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina. They will be greeted by the current residents of the station, Expedition 74, and the population of the station will have expanded from 7 crew members to 10 crew members for the next 12 days during a handover.
Or you can open orbital flights, ODF, and just mark it up all there. Oh, I can do both.
While we wait for the proper routing of this feed that is coming across from the Russian Mission Control Center in Moscow, you're looking at Sophie Adno from the European Space Agency at the hatchway. She, along with Sergei Kud-Sverchkov, who is the current commander of the International Space Station. Other crew members also have gathered just out of the field of view on the right side of your screen is NASA's Jessica Meir. The crew members eagerly awaiting the opening of the Soyuz hatch to greet their 3 new crewmates who will be spending the next 8 months on board the orbital outpost.
Needs to be performed tomorrow, perform 24.
The International Space Station is currently flying 260 miles above the outback of Australia, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. Menon, Dubrov, and Kikina launched from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan 5 hours and 17 minutes ago. They docked to the International Space Station's Prichal module at 12:52 p.m. Central Time, 1:52 p.m. Eastern Time. An automated docking that brought them a 3-hour, 4-minute transit from the launch pad at Baikonur to their new home in space for the next 8 months.
Step 4.1, air duct routing.
Вот тут мы пропускаем пункт 4.1.1, 4.1.2.
4.11, 4.2. Skip those. We need step 4.4. Yep, that just depends where we are docked. Right. Then, stage 35. Okay.
As mentioned a bit earlier, once the Soyuz hatch is open and the 3 new crew members move inside the Prichal module, they'll all make their way, all 10 crew members will make their way over to the Zvezda service module to set up for the welcoming remarks that are expected around the bottom of the hour. We are expecting some remarks from gathered guests on the balcony of the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow, and from spacecraft communicator Luca Parmitano of the European Space Agency here in Mission Control in Houston. Parmitano recently named as the pilot for Orion on the next mission of Artemis 3 that is scheduled for next year. One of his crewmates, Frank Rubio, has been a family escort attending the launch down at the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
We do not do that. Correct. Do not deactivate the gas analyzer. Copy. Skip 4.5.
The 3 arriving crew members, Anil Menon of NASA, and Roscosmos cosmonauts, Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina, have changed out of their Sokol launch and entry suits into more comfortable flight clothing. The Sokol suits are going to be dried out over the course of the next few hours. Once a safety briefing is conducted following the welcoming remarks to the crew members, the Soyuz will be deactivated. It is now receiving power from the International Space Station through the Prichal module for the duration of its 8 months in a dormant state, if you will, available for use if required, but in a dormant state until the Menon, Dubrov, and Kikina crew of Soyuz MS-29 prepare to return home next March.
Well, they're all there, right? Yep, they're all still there. Then,
just a few more steps in the pressure equalization in that small passageway between Soyuz and Prichal before the Soyuz hatch will swing open and the welcoming will get underway.
Understood. Then, going back to 4.4, page 36. All right. This step does not to be performed, and we have it noted down. We do not need to change it out.
Could Sverchkov, that you see there in the center of your screen, who's the current station commander, will hand over command of the International Space Station on July 25th to Jessica Meir of NASA, will be broadcasting the change of command ceremony on July 25th at 9:40 a.m. Eastern Time. That will lead to a series of broadcasts on the night of July 25th into the deep overnight hours of July 26th, leading to the undocking and landing of the Soyuz MS-28 crew, Chris Williams of NASA, Kud Sverchkov, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Sergei Mikheyev, who will fly their Soyuz MS-28 vehicle to a parachute-assisted landing on the steppe of Kazakhstan, again on Sunday, July 26th.
And then what do you want me with the, what do you want to do with the cap? The purification cartridge needs to be covered up. Okay. What do you want me to do with that? They are in the one that is in Servan. So you want me to cap the cartridge? Right. So large cap goes on that cartridge. Right. And says this, so do not forget. So let's open our two orbits rendezvous profile, page 72.
Sophie Adano of the European Space Agency that you
72.
see next to Kud Sverchkov and Jessica Mir just out of the field of view will be joined by Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrei Fedyaev and NASA astronaut Jack Hathaway aboard the Dragon spacecraft for their return to Earth, scheduled in September.
That's going to be in step 8.1. Okay, we'll do the steps for the opening. So you say hello to the crew for the cameras.
The flight controllers of the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov offering some final procedures to the Soyuz crew just prior to the opening of the hatch that will lead to their floating inside. There'll be hugs and handshakes before they move into the Zvezda service module for welcoming remarks.
Action, the steps in that second frame. That's for the com setup, MBS, and then the rest of the steps, and then all the steps under that frame. And as the SU cap, that's where we say that it needs to be installed. Okay. Right, I'll go back and do all these steps then. Affirmative. And one more thing. For deactivation, we would like you to install in BO. We need to install Unit 2. Yeah, that's in step 4, and it's all...
This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap, the Soyuz MS-29 crew, Anil Menon of NASA, and Roscosmos cosmonauts Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina lifted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan at 9:47 and 43 seconds a.m. Central Time this morning. It was 7:47 and 43 seconds p.m. at the launch site in the Central Asian desert. They had a 8-minute, 46-second climb to their preliminary orbit. The Soyuz spacecraft separated from the third stage of the Soyuz 2.1A booster, immediately followed by the unfurling of the solar arrays and navigational antennas on the Soyuz vehicle to begin the 3-hour chase to catch up to the International Space Station, which had flown directly over the Baikonur Cosmodrome just about right at launch time. A series of pre-programmed automated engine firings increased the altitude of the Soyuz to match that of the International Space Station, followed by a number of mid-course correction burns of the Soyuz thrusters that enabled the Soyuz to arrive in the neighborhood of the International Space Station, to which it ultimately docked to the Prichal module in an automated fashion at 12:52 p.m. Central Time, 1:52 p.m. Eastern Time, as the two spacecraft flew 260 statute miles over the Mediterranean. Once the hooks had closed to form a hard mate between the two vehicles, leak checks on both sides of the docking interface got underway. This now followed by the opening of the hatch on the station side of the docking interface on the Prichal module, and we are standing by for the opening of the Soyuz hatch, which should come just within the next few minutes.
свой медицинский поиск есть?
Yeah, where's the medical harness?
Москвы в канале СГ-1.
SMGC Moscow on Space Ground 1 for Sergei Kuznetsov.
У нас сейчас буквально через чуть-чуть начнется перерыв света.
There will be an LOS.
33 минут.
And we'll get the comeback at 33 minutes past the hour, just letting you know in advance.
Tigris, по Москве.
Tigris, MCC Moscow. Go ahead.
Связи Тигриса.
Go ahead. This is Tigris. Tigris, what's your pressure currently? 759 millimeters. Copy. You can start opening the hatches. That's going to be step 8.1. And there will be an LOS in 3 minutes on KU band. Yep, we heard. Okay, let's do close-out operations. Close ККТ. Closing ККТ. ККТ is closed and КВД is СПУ. КВД БО СУ needs to be closed. All right? КВД has been closed. So, ККТ is closed, КВД is closed. We are ready to open BOSU hatch cover for page 71. Copy. All right. Let's put the handle in the operational position.
And we're listening to the final steps in the procedures on the Soyuz side of the docking interface that will lead to the opening of that hatch just a moment or two from now.
And the hatch opening tool.
Right at the hatchway is the space station commander, Sergei Kuznetsov.
Moving.
The Expedition 74 crew in position to greet the newly arrived crew members, Anil Menon of NASA and Roscosmos cosmonauts Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina. We have gone into a brief loss signal through our tracking and data relay satellite system.
The hatch cover.
This loss of signal is about 11 to 12 minutes in duration as we hand over between satellites on the tracking and data relay satellite system. This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a view from a balcony camera at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow. We just entered about a 12-minute period of a loss of signal between satellites on the tracking and data relay satellite system. This coming, as Murphy's Law would have it, just about the time that the hatch was to have been opened on the Soyuz side of the docking interface, enabling Anil Menon of NASA and Roscosmos cosmonauts Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina to float inside to be greeted by their Expedition 74 colleagues. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, a view of the Russian Mission Control Room at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow. We expect to regain our communications with the International Space Station in about 6 minutes. Right around the time the Soyuz hatch was scheduled to be open, we did have a loss of signal as we passed out of range of one of the tracking and data relay satellites on our constellation of satellites around the globe. So at this point, we cannot confirm with certainty as to whether the Soyuz hatch actually opened or when it might have opened. We'll stand by for further word on that. We do hopefully expect, when we do regain our voice audio capability from the station, to either see the newly arrived crew members, Anil Menon of NASA, and Roscosmos cosmonauts Pyotr Dubrov and Anna Kikina, either about to open the hatch or if they have already, inside the Zvezda service module, preparing for welcoming remarks. We'll be standing by for that, and again, we do expect a acquisition of signal on our tracking and data relay satellite system constellation about 5 minutes from now.